Hi friends, Elijah here, and for the past couple of months, I've been working on my very first show reel. It's a compilation of the documentary and narrative work that I've been working on for the past 2 years. I wanted to just break down why I created it and hopefully encourage you as a filmmaker to create your own. So let's get into it. When I first started making videos, I felt like a chicken with my head cut off, just running around trying to figure out what I could do with this camera in my hand. And as I've been maturing in my filmmaking journey, I've realized that documentary work and telling real and raw stories is what I'm truly passionate about. And so I reached out to a documentary team for an organization, and they asked to see my portfolio work, to which I realized that all of my portfolio work is stuck in Google Drive links, Vimeo links, and a scary dark folder in my hard drive. And so I decided to take all of that and compile it into a 1-minute video where I could show them all of my best work where they didn't have to wade through unnecessary content. Making a showreel is like creating a visual resume where you have to be specific about the type of skills you have in order to get the kind of jobs you want in the future. So out of all my work, I chose 4 films that were most relevant to the type of films that I want to create in the future, 2 documentaries and 2 narratives. And out of those films, I chose scenes that demonstrated my ability to work within diverse locations, different lighting conditions, and circumstances. So on the topic of different lighting conditions, I thought it would be helpful to provide a quick breakdown on 2 scenes that were featured in my show reel. So for my first frame, I pulled it from my project Called, which is a 2-minute narrative that I shot a while back for the Student Missionary Union. If you want to check out my behind the scenes video, I'll put up the link. This frame specifically was shot in an office setting where we had about 4 hours to do all the filming that we needed for this section of the project. We shot with an FX3 with a Sigma art lens. I think this was a 50mm, I could totally be blanking. And the style that we wanted to go for was a more curated, naturalistic look. Fortunately, we were able to shape the overhead lighting in a way that we could turn off certain parts of the room and turn on certain parts of the room. So we turned off the lights right in here and right here. As you can see right here, there is some light, and that is sun through the window, as well as I think there are a couple overhead lights that we left right there. Really, the only light that we used for this frame was a Godox FL100, which is a light panel, and we threw a diffusion as well as a grid on top, and we clamped it to the ceiling with a scissor clamp. We originally had a C-stand booming over the cubicle, but we realized that a scissor clamp probably would be a better option, and so we switched that out. Really, all we did was that light, and I think we had it was a 40x40 floppy that we used for negative fill on this side. And honestly, as you can see, we were just trying to get kind of this edge lighting right here and then some edge lighting right there. We also kind of wanted to accentuate this telephone because that was kind of the main focus of the film, hence the word Called. This negative fill was basically just blocking some light right here. I think this is actually a really interesting example because there wasn't a whole lot we could work with. We wanted to keep it kind of boring and kind of, maybe the word I would use is kind of lifeless. So we kind of wanted to accentuate that in the lighting choice. I think the interesting thing about narrative work versus commercial work is the imperfections that you often see in narrative work. Commercial work is all about getting that eye light and that nice backlight and shaping the light around the face and the background and accentuating different products. But the reality is narratives, you kind of have room for imperfections, and that's actually what kind of gives it this realistic look. And so I think this is a perfect example of just kind of using what you got and shaping the world that you want with light. Something that I do notice about this frame that I would probably do differently is actually lighting his face a little bit more, because as you can see, it's slightly underexposed right here, as well as kind of this darker side of this image. I honestly don't know what we could have added, but maybe another Godox right here. But honestly, for the time we had and the equipment that we had, I would say that this frame turned out pretty well. So the second frame was actually taken from the project How Will We Witness, which is also a 2-minute narrative that I shot for the Student Missionary Union about a year ago. We filmed this scene in a studio that actually had no windows, and the walls were painted actually black, which actually provided a lot of negative fill in the room, so we didn't have to worry about light bouncing off the walls. We used the FX3 again with a Sigma f2.8 28 to 70 millimeter lens, and this project was actually, or I guess this scene specifically was actually really interesting because we shot this at 60 FPS with a 1/30 shutter speed. And then I slowed down this scene in post. And I guess I wanted to test a theory to see if you could slow down slow shutter in post, and surprise, you can. We wanted to go for kind of this like dreamlike sequence. I like to call it poetic realism, but I don't think that's actually a thing. Kind of this out of body experience where the main character is kind of there, but not there. We used 2 lights in this frame, a Kino Flow Celeb 201, which is a light panel, and it's kind of an older light panel. I do not recommend it. It's pretty reliable, but it's really heavy. We threw on a honeycomb on that Kino Flow, and then we threw up a Matthews 40 by 40 silk, and that kind of just provided this nice soft diffusion on the character's face. And we used another light, and that light was actually not pointed at the character, it was pointed on the ground. Because there's no windows, we had to figure out a way to light the ground in a way that was artistic, and so we actually used an aperture 120D, and we threw up this light right here, and we used barn doors actually to frame, I guess to shape the light so that we wouldn't get any of this in the frame or any of this, and it was just a light streaking here. But what we realized was that it was pretty harsh, and so I do not recommend this, but we put a unbleached muslin and we kind of just wrapped it around the light. Probably not the smartest idea, but I guess it did work for what we needed. If I was to do this differently now, I probably would have added a backlight just to kind of add a little bit more definition to the character's hair, because we did lose some information in that area right here. But it was fortunate that we did slash the light in a way that made the character stand out from the background. And so overall, I mean, this frame is great for what I knew at the time. And again, narrative has a lot of imperfections, and so I'd call this one a win. I actually would love to hear you guys' thoughts on this lighting breakdown, so please let me know in the comments what you thought, if there was anything that you took away from this, and any feedback or things that you would have done differently in these lighting scenarios. I would love to hear that. But back to the video. I did my research and I took a lot of inspiration from my friend Afton and other YouTube filmmakers like Mark Bone, Danny Gewirtz, and Jacob Klova. If you're anything like me, as a young filmmaker, I know that it can be difficult to know where to start. I hope that this channel can be a resource for you and also just a source of encouragement as you continue along your own journey as a creative. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.